Hey, welcome to the first live dispatch. Got a little video to get things going here.
This fucking car is gonna burn up on the side of the goddamn road.
Need to see that again.
This fucking car is gonna burn up on the side of the goddamn road.
Yeah, well, that's the video that got me interested in trying to do this dispatch live. I came upon that particular
She burned up on me today. Fast.
pause there. I came upon that particular incident on Reddit. Recently posted by the owner of this lovely red Model A. Rather than have you have to listen to my sultry voice as I try and read this post, I'm going to have a robot read it for me. But after the robot's read his post, then we can discuss what happened and how it can be prevented and that sort of thing. I think it's an interesting case study. So without further ado, let's get this underway.
She burned up on me today. Fast version of the story. Out for a cruise today, on my birthday no less. Suddenly she's running like absolute S-word, maybe 1 or 2 cylinders at best. About 30 seconds later, she dies completely. Stone dead. I coast off to the side of the road and smoke starts billowing out of the dash. The amp meter starts to turn black and I can hear it crackling. Open the hood, the terminal box and every wire I can see are smoking and melting before my eyes. Call 911. I've been a fireman for 25 years. I know the value of calling for help early. Dive back into the car and shut the fuel off. Grab my tool bag and use a flathead screwdriver to pop the main fuse out. Makes no difference. It's a 90+ degree day here in New York, and the car had been parked outside for a while, so every surface is very hot to the touch. Can't tell if the wires are still burning up because they're still energized or because they're just that hot. While I wait, I take a quick video mostly because I want to capture where the smoke is coming from when I go back to look later. I decide to pop the gauge cluster cover off, 2 flathead screws, because I know I'm going to need to get a fire extinguisher into the dash. Fire department arrives and I ask them to not pull the hose out and obliterate the car, but rather please let me give it a few shots with a carbon dioxide, CO2, extinguisher first. They oblige me, but a few blasts with the extinguisher do nothing. She is still burning. Then I remember. Positive ground. Pulling the fuse does nothing. The entire chassis of the car is still energized. A dead short will continue to burn. I have to get the battery disconnected. Dive back into the tool bag. Thank God I carry sockets. Open up the floor, disconnect the battery, and within seconds, all the burning stops. The wiring is completely F-word, but I saved the car. Enjoy these couple of videos of me about to watch my prized possession smolder away on the side of the road. We'll post some more later when I start to pull her apart.
Well, there you have it. His tale of woe from the side of the street. So he was driving along, and then the car started to sputter. It came to a stop, and smoke started coming out of the dash. That's all we know about the incident. I was struck by a few things when I first saw this and read this. First of all, I know that electrical gremlins behind the dash of Model Ts, Model As, probably all cars from that vintage, is a real concern. And it immediately reminded me of my original fears when I first got the Model T and realized that the electrical system was just always on. If the battery is connected to the main leads, then the entire car is live all the time. If you're sitting at a car show and some kid is posing in the driver's seat and stands down on the starter, it'll start cranking over and the car might take off or at least lunge forward. So, I mean, I immediately got concerned about that situation and made some changes to my car to prevent it. But that's kind of what we're here to talk about today is what happened and how it can be prevented. I think the guy remarkably did a lot of the right things. It's just that, you know, and he was well aware of what was happening and made some sound decisions. But the car wasn't prepped properly, and that's something that by talking about it here today, I hope other people who have antique cars can learn something from this incident and maybe prepare better and do things to prevent it and do things to be able to react more effectively should it happen to them. Now, I'm doing this dispatch live on my own. So when I'm talking, I'm not reading your comments. There'll be times when I need to read through your comments and catch up. So I think what I'll do now, if you don't mind, I'm just going to play that reading of the post again. That way it'll refresh your minds on the different steps that he took and what happened. And then we can talk about it after. And while that's playing, it'll give me a chance to catch up on your comments and be better prepared to respond to you guys as well.
She burned up on me today. Fast version of the story. Out for a cruise today, on my birthday no less. Suddenly she's running like absolute S-word, maybe 1 or 2 cylinders at best. About 30 seconds later, she dies completely. Stone dead. I coast off to the side of the road and smoke starts billowing out of the dash. The amp meter starts to turn black and I can hear crackling. Open the hood. The terminal box and every wire I can see are smoking and melting before my eyes. Call 911. I've been a fireman for 25 years. I know the value of calling for help early. Dive back into the car and shut the fuel off. Grab my tool bag and use a flathead screwdriver to pop the main fuse out. Makes no difference. It's a 90+ degree day here in New York, and the car had been parked outside for a while, so every surface is very hot to the touch. Can't tell if the wires are still burning up because they're still energized or because they're just that hot. While I wait, I take a quick video mostly because I want to capture where the smoke is coming from when I go back to look later. I decide to pop the gauge cluster cover off, 2 flathead screws, because I know I'm going to need to get a fire extinguisher into the dash. Fire department arrives and I ask them to not pull the hose out and obliterate the car, but rather please let me give it a few shots with a carbon dioxide, CO2, extinguisher first. They oblige me, but a few blasts with the extinguisher do nothing. She is still burning. Then I remember. Positive ground. Pulling the fuse does nothing. The entire chassis of the car is still energized. A dead short will continue to burn. I have to get the battery disconnected. Dive back into the tool bag. Thank God I carry sockets. Open up the floor, disconnect the battery, and within seconds, all the burning stops. The wiring is completely F-word, but I saved the car. Enjoy these couple of videos of me about to watch my prized possession smolder away on the side of the road. We'll post some more later when I start to pull her apart.
All right. So sorry to put you through that twice, but that did give me a chance to catch up. I made a few show notes, just more for myself, but you can kind of see what I want to go through here. I'm just trying to keep my own thoughts organized. I'm not a person who generally can just talk on my own to camera, so I'll do my best here to keep things rolling and to keep up to date with your comments and questions and things. But for now, this is how this is going to work. So we've had a look at the fire video, and I want to talk a bit about what happened and how the guy reacted. I think he had quite good presence of mind through it, at least as he describes it there. But I do think he got lucky that it didn't escalate. It seemed to just continue frying wires and smoldering and burning wire insulation and that kind of thing. It could have escalated, and he didn't seem to have a fire extinguisher of his own at hand. So I know a number of you have already mentioned that. So I've got a fire extinguisher in my car. I keep it with me at all the time, but I don't have it as at hand as I probably should. It's in my trunk. So I think it takes too long to get out of the car, go to the trunk, open it, and find it in there and come back. I'm going to get it mounted either just behind my calves against the seat, or on the floor or something like that. There's not a lot of room in a Model T, so I'll have to see where I can put it. If not there, I can put it under the seat so that I just have to get out, throw the seat off, and grab it. But feel free to comment where you guys keep your fire extinguishers on your antique cars. I'd be curious. I think that's a good thing. I've got a fire extinguisher in all of my cars, modern ones as well. And there have been a number of times on the side of the road where I've had to pull over, grab it, and run out to assist someone else. I've never had to fire my fire extinguisher in anger, but I have had it at the ready a few times. So I know it's reassuring to have it at hand. Yeah, so we were talking about the steps this guy took. So when things started smoldering, he pulled over, the car quit, and I think one of the first things he said he did was to pop his fuse out, figuring, I guess, that it hadn't, the fuse hadn't burned to break the circuit, because he was still having electrical potential causing the burning behind the dash. So I think that's pretty wise move. I mean, he popped it out, but it didn't do anything. So that means that the wiring behind his dash wasn't fused. So I'm guessing he had a fuse installed, but it only went to other systems, headlights or something. I don't know exactly what. But certainly if you pop a fuse out, or the main fuse, it should disconnect power to everything, and things should start cooling down right away. So I'm guessing he didn't have that fuse installed correctly. I want to talk a little bit about that fuse a little more in a second. I know what's normally done on Model A's, and it's a pretty good, simple system, I think, as I understand it. So I want to talk about that. Model T's don't have any fuses, but I know there are kits you can get for a main fuse as well. So that's definitely something that was interesting. So then he had the presence of mind, when the fuse didn't improve things, to actually disconnect the battery. So that meant he had to fish out tools. In the Model A, the battery's under the floorboards, so he had to pull the battery access cover, use his tools to get one of the terminals on the battery disconnected before things started to settle down. Again, that all takes a lot of time, so I think he's really lucky it didn't escalate in that time. But it was the right thing to do. You need to get that battery disconnected. And since he clearly doesn't have a battery disconnect at hand, that's the next thing, right? Like, I think all antique cars should have a battery disconnect switch, or some of them are like an emergency pull, anything that'll completely disconnect the battery from the rest of the systems at hand. So it should be installed in the cabin where you can grab it, or at least very close. So if you just hop out, you can flip that. So yeah, he's pretty lucky. I just saw a note here. Sorry if I've missed some others, but Bruce is suggesting, interesting, that they didn't clip the cable. I mean, that would work well. There's no risk to them in cutting a 6 or a 12 volt cable, and that would have worked really well. Let's see if there's any other comments here that I should comment on right away. Yeah, Todd was saying that he saw a car burn up in a parade. That's pretty awful. I hope everyone was safe. And yeah, talk about on display and embarrassing. Oh my goodness. Stalling in a parade is one thing, catching fire quite another. Yeah, so we were just talking about fuses and disconnects. So let's take a look at the fuse thing a little more. On the Model A's, let's see if I can find my audio visual aids here. Here we go. On the Model A's, the vendors sell a master fuse that you mount near the starting motor, and you take a main lead off of that. There's a good video by Flathead Terry. Where are you? Here we go. I'll play this for you. There's no sound. I'll talk over it a bit likely, but just to give you a sense of what we're talking about here. So this is the vendor safety fuse, and he's pointing out where it mounts. So this fuse does not fuse the starter motor, only if wired correctly, everything else. So this won't prevent you from burning up your starter button or your the main lead from the battery to the starter, but everything downstream of that, if wired correctly. I suspect this is the kind of fuse or something like it that the Reddit poster who had the fire with the red car there, I suspect it was something like this. And he popped that fuse out, but there must have been more wires coming off elsewhere that didn't go through the fuse. And so that's why popping it out didn't make the difference. Now, if this fuse is working properly, it would have prevented the dash fire from proceeding very far. I mean, something went wrong in the dash area, some sort of something made connection that shouldn't have, some short circuit or something like that. We can talk a bit more about some of the possible causes later, but something went wrong. Generally, that drives the current flow through the system way up, and then that fuse burns out at its limit. So it might have smelled bad, and the engine might have quit, and he might have rolled to a stop at the side of the road, but that would have been the worst thing that happened. But clearly that fuse didn't do its job, because things just kept cooking, and the battery voltage just kept going to ground somewhere, and generating really high currents, which was burning up wires and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's obviously wasn't working, wasn't wired properly. So I guess the moral of this story at this point is, get some of these convenient safety measures that are sold, but make sure they get installed correctly too. Like bounce your installation off a friend or someone who's good with this stuff, or check, post a few pictures and post it to your local club page, and just make sure that that it's done right as well. It's not a thing that's easy to test in a live test, kind of dangerous, but it can be checked with voltmeters and that sort of thing to work out if it's all done correctly. And check out Flathead Terry if you're interested in that how-to video. Where am I here? Back to this guy. Yeah, so fuse, good thing. Now, I had a big talk with Randall and Vince and Rob this morning about fuses and where they go. That what you just saw with Flathead Terry is kind of the bare minimum, I would think. Modern cars have many fuses. Many of the circuits have their own fuse. It's safer that way because each circuit can be fused correctly for the needs of that circuit, and you can kind of set your trigger points lower for what kind of problems will cause those fuses to pop. But it's a lot more work, obviously. And as I mentioned, the starter circuit wasn't fused at all. That's a really high current circuit. It's 100 or 200 amps probably. And it's a pretty hefty fuse, not something people normally do, but it can be done. So, if you want to go farther than that, you should look into more separate fuses on separate circuits. It'll help with troubleshooting too. Rob pointed out when we were talking this morning, because if you've got a short circuit or a problem and you only have the one fuse, you don't know where that problem is. But if you have a fuse on each of your different circuits, the problem circuit will pop and it'll give you a clue right away where you need to look for the problem. He was describing a repair he did where he had a short somewhere on the Model A he was fixing, and it was a real pain to find because it didn't have any separate fuse circuits at all. So he had to look at everything and study every connection, trace every wire, and look for stray wires or worn insulators or anything like that. Yeah, so that was good. Fuses. So yeah, the next thing that came up, and everybody has already mentioned in the comments, is the battery disconnect. I think this is a really important, inexpensive, and I'd say absolutely necessary installation on your antique cars. There's an example here. Do something here. There we go. This is one type of battery disconnect that you can get. So this goes directly connected to one of your battery main leads. So you've got a positive and a negative heavy lead from your battery. Usually, let's say talking Model T's, negative ground. The negative lead just has a band to ground, and then it's got a heavy wire for the positive lead leading forward to the starter switch and to the starter and to all the other systems. This needs to go between the battery and the first thing, which is usually between the battery and the starter switch or something like that, so that when you flip this switch, it's as if you pulled a terminal off the battery. All systems go down. So I put a disconnect in my T so that when I'm at car shows and when the car's in storage, or if I'm just leaving it for a long time, I can flip that switch, effectively completely disconnect the battery, and then if anyone's in the cabin and they happen to stand on the starter or flip any switches or anything like that, nothing will happen. But it's also a safety device in the event that you have a problem that occurs on the road, because you can flip this switch. So if the fellow in the red car, the red Model A, had the option when he pulled over and the dash was smoking, the very first thing you should do is flip that switch and then get your fire extinguisher ready, right? So there's different styles of these. Vince from Baggett Corner did a really neat knife style, really antique looking approach. I just want to show you how he did that. What he did there is really cool. He's also very well dressed. So I know Vince made this battery tray himself. He's still running 6 volts. Remind me later. I want to talk about 6 versus 12 volts in terms of safety and the wiring problems and the risk of fire and that sort of thing. you can see Vince here attaching his negative terminal with the cutout on it. Now, some might find it controversial, but it really doesn't matter whether you interrupt the negative or the positive with your disconnect. As long as you get one or the other, the car goes completely safe and dead. There we go. Yeah, so battery disconnect, really important. Where are my notes? I've got to turn Vince off first. Oh. Right on, okay. Fuses, battery disconnects, yep. Ah, yes, the Model A. So I don't know if you noticed in the red car fire, it appears that he didn't have any gasoline fumes or drips that added to the problem. I think things would have escalated and he might have lost the car if there were. The Model A has an interesting fuel gauge, which is part of your instrument cluster, and it's got seals and it can leak. So not only do you have the risk of short circuits and sparks and things behind your instrument panel from corrosion or from worn wires or whatever, you've also got the possibility of having fuel vapor or dripping gasoline from the fuel gauge in that exact same reason. In fact, the fuel gauge is the highest point in the instrument cluster, so it's going to drip down onto everything. So let's just say that the Model A is a bit unique that way, and this is how it looks. This is from a Paul Shin video. Okay, I've never done any work on a Model A. Rob would know this stuff inside out, but I thought it might be interesting for some of you who are Model T guys or not Model A guys to see how that works. So that's literally a liquid connection that he's pointing out, and he's going to open up, because what he was doing here in this video was repairing the fuel gauge float, but there's a sight glass there and a seal. So he's opening up a direct port into the gas tank that has some gaskets and seals on there that can leak and drip. So if you got a Model A, make sure that doesn't leak at all, ever. Don't take risks with that. It would escalate any kind of problems really fast. And that's my camera going out like it does every half hour. There we go. Got to hand it to Ford, though. I mean, talk about a ingeniously simple way to do a visual fuel indicator. Totally mechanical. It's pretty cool. All right. Yes, we've had a look at the special Model A situation. That's why you need a fire extinguisher and a cutout, and preferably fuses. Because if you're going to set fire to any fuel that's dripped out of that gauge area with whatever problem to start it, you need to put it out right away. Okay, so what's next? I just want to talk about fire risks. Now, this is where you guys in the comments can really pitch in. I'm talking about electrical fire risks. I mean, there are others in old cars that might be worth another talk sometime, but electrical fire risks. So he mentioned the fellow with the burning red Model A there mentioned that it's 6 volts. Oh, it's positive ground. I don't think that really makes any difference. Correct me if I'm wrong, but whether you're 6 or 12 volts, it's not more or less likely that you're going to have shorts or fires. Whether you're positive or negative ground, the absence of a disconnect, the absence of a correctly wired fuse is always the same problem. It really doesn't have any impact, I don't think, on the risks. People have said that 6-volt battery cars are more fire prone because you've got to push more current. Well, that's true. For the same power draw, it's just volts times amps, so you're going to use a little more current in a 6-volt system, but using more current isn't necessarily a higher fire risk. You could argue that it's a lower fire risk because the electrical potential is half that of a 12 volt, so the ability to arc and actually set fire to something is half in a 6-volt compared to a 12. I mean, airplanes use 24 or 48 volts just to reduce the size of the wires they need to use to save weight. So, and I knew some of the newest cars, I think from Tesla, for example, are using a 48 volt accessory standard rather than 12. So I really don't think that's the fire risk thing. As long as you've got the good terminals that aren't corroded, good wires that are the right size and are properly jacketed, and you've got your fuses and your cutoffs, as we said, I think the risks are really low. It doesn't really make any difference whether it's 6 or 12, positive or negative ground, but correct me if I'm wrong. But what are some other risk factors when you're talking about electrical fires in antique cars? Well, some of the old wires had a woven jacket, which is perfectly good when it's woven tight and not degraded from age or worn or where the weave has started to pull apart and open up. Then you've got problems. And sometimes they're not very waterproof, those jackets, so you can get corrosion within the wires, which can lead to problems. I mean, a corroded wire can have higher resistance than a good one. Corroded terminals, loose terminals can spark. You guys aren't helping me out here much, but there's other ways electrical fires can start. I know starter motors, if they're not in good condition, can draw a lot more current, and you can actually set fire to the main cable from the battery to the starter through your switch just through current draw. That cable can get so hot. So you got to watch for that. Headlights, especially old incandescent ones, draw quite a bit of current. Got to watch for those wires getting hot too. Basically, you don't want wires to get hot, and you don't want anything to spark. So those are some of the things to think about. Now, I put together a little list of some of the fire risks that I think, and some like myths that I think we need to dispel. Here's a couple of them here. So I've got a column for increased fire risk and a column for lesser fire risk. I imagine there's some things we should still add to this before it would be considered complete, but I just threw this together literally right before I came on live here. Some of these things we've talked about to lessen your fire risk have an at-hand disconnect, not one that's hidden away under the trunk floorboards or you have to crawl into the car to use. Make sure your instrument panel and hopefully other circuits are fused correctly. Have an at-hand fire extinguisher, and as I was just mentioning, correct wire gauges. Increased fire risk, Model A, just because you've got fuel gauge there. So, don't accept any leaking from that fuel gauge. Get it repaired always and right away. Old wiring that can be corroded or frayed or have exposed, uncovered jacketing. Corroded terminals. And Randall pointed out that it seems to always be the shiny cars with the beautiful paint that catch fire, never the ratty old beat up ones. I think there must be something to that. So I think I'm safe there. Mine isn't very shiny. Not sure cause and effect, but there seemed to be some correlation. And so I'm sure there's others. So if you guys want to chime in with some other items, we can add them to that list. Just taking a peek through your comments, looks like I've fallen behind here. Wow, lots of comments I've fallen behind on. Sorry, guys. I like this one from Bugnut. So Vince asked, what would short behind the instrument panel? The ammeter definitely is where you hear about a lot of problems. But wires are just rubbing around back there so they can rub their insulation off. Terminals can get corroded. I mean, there's a lot of live stuff there. They don't use relays in these old cars. So, full current for your light switch and that sort of thing is going through the switch. So you get arcing and trouble like that too. I wonder if you've got a leaky fuel gauge in the Model A and you just flip some of those switches back there, is it possibly going to set things off? I don't know. Maybe I'm overreacting to that. There seem to be a lot of Model A's and they do fine. So, what other comments have I missed here? Well, Glenn, 26 or newer Model T, all the Model A's. What are some of the other common antique cars that had fuel tanks in the cowl? I know a lot of the early Dodges and Chevys had it at the back of the car between the bumper and the body, and then they used a vacuum fuel pump. But maybe Bruce can chime in here. Any other cowl tanks? Ah, yes. Rodents. You're quite right, Joe. They are a big problem. Now, they tend to find modern insulation materials tastier than old ones. But I know I've had on the newest car I have, a 2017, we've had rodent chew on the wires causing problems. I couldn't find the problem. I needed my son with his good eyes to go over all the wiring careful, and he spotted where the rodents had chewed the wires, and they were all frayed. I just had trouble seeing it. But once we found that, we were able to replace those wires and put a jacket over the wires so that they wouldn't chew through. Bugnut's talking here about the mention of the ammeter turning black. And yeah, I think if there was, I've also heard, and the Model A guys that are on can chime in here, but I've heard that there's been a batch of bad reproduction ammeters that are prone to have electrical problems. So if that, it could very well be the case as well. I think I saw Paul Shin has a whole video on that where he talks about how to identify it, how to correct it, how to, avoid it, that sort of thing. And Glenn has joined. Welcome, Glenn. Sorry if I've missed any of your other comments. All right. I finally caught up, I think. Now, let me see if there's anything else I wanted to touch on here. No, I think that's about it. Any questions or comments from you guys before we wrap things up on this special live dispatch talking about electrical fires? I should mention, sorry I don't have pictures ready. I was looking through all my photos right before I went live, and I just couldn't find them, but I can show it some other time. But, what did I do in my car when I got nervous about electrical fire issues? Well, as usual, I went overboard. I've got a high current fuse in the main positive cable running from the battery up to the starting motor. So if the starter starts misbehaving, drawing too much current, I can pop a fuse there. I've got a relay rather than a disconnect, a main disconnect relay that I can operate from a hidden switch under the dash. So when I arrive at the car show, I just flick that switch, or when I arrive home, and it depowers the whole car. And I've got a bunch of individual circuit fuses so that it's easy to diagnose. So yeah, and all new wiring. Yeah, all new wiring. So that's how overboard I went. And a fire extinguisher, as I mentioned, though I do need to mount that more conveniently. Randall has started some trash talking on the Model A guys. And more rodent nightmares, yeah. Yeah, I think this soy-based, more environmentally friendly wire insulation is proving to be too tasty. All right. Well, then, give you a couple more minutes in case you got anything else to say, but then I'm going to wrap things up for tonight. Let me know in the video comments if you like this live dispatch format. I usually produce my dispatch videos so they're a little, more prepared and probably a little easier to watch than just watching me ramble on. Don't forget, next week at this time, we have our monthly live stream with the guys. We haven't picked a topic yet, so feel free to suggest topics for us. Randall, a real barn burner. Yeah, let's hope not, but it could have been. Yeah, indeed. Oh, gosh. All right. Okay, guys, I am going to roll the credits, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.